Listen up, get ready, I'm not gonna take no more. There's a revolution, a revelation going on in my soul. Buckle up, get ready, we're not gonna sit back. Welcome back to Live from the Heartland for the week of March 7th. And our first guest is Delmarie Cobb, who is a longtime media and political consultant and has helped out a lot of people. She contributes to independent politics in Chicago, Illinois, and beyond, assists organizations and candidates for office, and is real good at strategic planning and development. So hello to you today.
Good morning. How are you doing?
I'm good. And you may have caught a little of it. I didn't, but we know that our Mayor Johnson is in D.C. today. And let's start off with that. He and a number of other mayors of sanctuary cities are being challenged by the forces that be in Congress these days. I wonder if you have any take on that or any reports coming into you.
Well, from what I read so far, I read that he gave a forceful opening statement and, of course, reiterated Chicago's position on being a sanctuary city and what that means. And it's good that he is there with other progressive mayors, given that he's also there with the mayor of New York, Eric Adams, who we know has been absolutely point. So I'm glad that Brandon Johnson will have some reinforcements.
Well, to follow up on that, we've been rooting for Mayor Johnson, and I think a number of us who listen to this program or view it, worked for his election. We're not always happy about his role these days, and I'm wondering if you have any comments on that. Because I asked because it's not too long until the next election, and there are a lot of more conservative types waiting in the wings, and I'm wondering what your take is on Johnson and his chances going forward.
Well, I think that we could take a page from the presidential campaign. If Democrats do not tell their story, it's going to be told to us and for us. And that's what's happening with the city of Chicago. You've got the conservative wing of the party who is telling us that Mayor Johnson is the worst mayor in the city of Chicago, according to the Wall Street Journal. And as I said to another reporter, I don't go to the Wall Street Journal to find out about progressive politics in Chicago. Yeah. And so, so I could care less what the Wall Street Journal thinks of Mayor Johnson. What I do know about Mayor Johnson, and what we all know as progressives and as longtime people who've been in the movement and been in politics, is that I said to one reporter, he's done no harm. And the reporter said to me, well, that's a low bar. And I said, no, that's not a low bar when you look at what the harm that the other mayors have done to us throughout the years that we are still paying for. And we are blaming Mayor Johnson, who's actually trying to get us out of the bind that we have. I mean, when you look at the fact that under Daley, we had a pension holiday. We did not pay into the pension the way we should. And as a result, we are now, all these years later, still trying to pay the pension. We've got all this debt hanging over us. That was one of the reasons for the property tax increase that was proposed. I'm not happy about a property tax, but I understand the situation. We had Daley, who had a $250 million hole put under Block 37 that we're still paying for. They're still sitting there idle. That then Rahm Emanuel came along and asked Elon Musk to come up with a solution to send a train from downtown Chicago to O'Hare, and that never happened. We have a Daley who sold the Skyway. He sold the parking meter deals. Those entities have made their money back hand over fist, and we're still paying for that. I mean, we can just go on and on from Rahm Emanuel closing 50 schools, the largest school closure in the history of the country. The mental health clinics, and the fact that he allegedly tried to cover up the murder of a 17-year-old, which should be disqualifying in and of itself. Can you imagine if Brandon Johnson had done that? You think he would be before the Economic Club coyly intimating that he may run again for mayor? Are you kidding me? There's a double standard.
No, I hear you. Well, let me ask you again, though. What do you think is going to happen? Do you think Johnson will run again? Do you think Johnson will be able to glean the support of all the progressives he had before? And who are the let's call them the bad guys waiting in the wings, the opportunists? I know you mentioned Rahm. There's a few other people that might be showing up, but Rahm has been pretty outspoken about criticizing the Democratic Party and kind of leaving open his future.
So I really don't think Rahm Emanuel plans to run for re-election. I think what Rahm Emanuel is doing is he's on an audition tour. He's auditioning to replace Senator Dick Durbin. And that's why that's Dick Durbin and the other Democrats who also are responsible for Joe Biden stepping down, were responsible for Rahm Emanuel rehabilitating himself by becoming ambassador of Japan. This was always the big picture, is rehabilitate his reputation so he can then replace Dick Durbin when Dick Durbin decides to step down. So that's what we're going to see. We're going to see Rahm Emanuel everywhere because that's what he's doing, auditioning. But the other people who are stepping up, I believe, are Bill Conway, who is the alderman of the 34th Ward, whose father is very rich, and he ran against Kim Foxx, and his father put a lot of money into the campaign, I believe $10 million. And so we're going to see that. Paul Vallas still thinks he's got a chance after losing four different races 4 different times, and he's not even a Chicagoan, and he wasn't a Chicagoan last time, but that didn't stop him. And so, there are people who are lining up who certainly are going to run against Brandon, but I think Brandon will run again for re-election, and I think that's why I say it's very important for him to take this next period of time leading up to the election to tell his story and to compare it to the other people who the business community wants to hail as somehow doing a good job. They did not do a good job.
You mentioned Dick Durbin and Rahm maybe positioning himself to run for that seat. There is a serious question about older political office holders, in our town, whether it be Jan Schakowsky or whether it be Danny Davis or whether it be our Senator Durbin. There is that question that comes upon all of us getting a little bit older. And I'm wondering who might be thinking about the Senate besides Rahm.
Well, I think, Rahm may be surprised because even though he's preparing himself and he's out there, it's not going to be a cakewalk. People are not just going to suppress their ambitions for him. So you're probably going to have Alexi Giannoulias, who is the Secretary of State. You're going to have Raja Krishnamurthy, who is certainly a prolific fundraiser. You're going to have Lauren Underwood, who is a progressive. You're going to have Juliana Stratton, who's the lieutenant governor. She's interested. You're going to have Robin Kelly, who is a congresswoman from the far South side. So this is not going to be a cakewalk. People are not just going to suppress their ambitions because, Rahm Emanuel is going to run.
When is Durbin's term up?
Well, he says he's going to make a decision soon. So we'll see how soon that is. Given what's going on in Washington, he either is revved up and wants to stay there for the fight, or he's like, oh, no, I'm through. I'm tired. So it'll be interesting to see what happens.
Let me switch gears here a little bit. And maybe since International Women's Day is on Sunday, and there is a march downtown on Saturday, I guess Saturday is the 8th. There is a march at the Federal Building, And I'm wondering if you would talk a little bit about women in the political picture these days, here in Illinois or beyond.
Well, women are a very important part of the Democratic Party, and we have to continue to be. We have to continue to push the envelope. We saw what just happened with Kamala Harris running for president. If it weren't for the Democrats, we wouldn't have any women who have made it to that level of electoral politics. And we see, unfortunately, that we're in a country that has a bias towards women and certainly has a bias towards a woman of color. That's a double whammy. But even at that, when you look at how well Hillary Clinton, she got 227 electoral votes, and Kamala Harris got 226. Hillary Clinton ran for 2 years. Kamala ran for 100 days. I mean, so she didn't do too badly if you look at it in those terms. And so we've got to keep pushing the envelope. And that's why it's important for women to stay in politics, to be aggressive, to speak out, and to be the moral conscience of the party.
I'm for that. I like taking leadership, following the leadership of the women. But last night, when and we're talking here, you and I are talking on the 5th. Last night, the current president gave a talk to Congress, and a number of the women in the Democratic Party who were there wore, I think, pink, and to show how many women are in the Democratic Party as opposed to the Republican Party. Any comment on what we ought to do to win women over from the Republicans to the Democrats, or to even a more progressive position?
Well, I don't know if we can win Republican women. I mean, given the crop of Republican women that we currently have in Congress, I don't know, because I think that they've decided to be a female version of Donald Trump. For them, that's working. For us, that's not who we are. That does not reflect our values. But as Democratic women, we certainly have to continue to lead. And if you look at even the Senate, the fact that we've got 2 Black women for the first time in the Senate at the same time, which is major. We're still breaking through, and we're still making gains, and we're still making history, and we're certainly in a leadership role. I mean, this too shall pass in terms of Donald Trump, but we have to be the voice, and we cannot just sit by quietly and let the Republicans get away with all the things that they're getting away with or trying to do.
Delmarie Cobb, what do you think Democrats or activists, progressives ought to be doing these days? Do we go to the streets more? Do we, hope for the courts to keep coming through? At least they do a little bit so far. How do you think we should move going forward to try to achieve like a better result for who represents us? Well, and I guess what I really wanted to throw in part was the strength of the Black women in the Democratic Party and the loss of some Black men in the most recent election. How do we address that?
Well, I think that we're in a phase, I call it performative politics. That's the phase that we're in. And people are going to have to rise to the occasion. I mean, we are no longer in a position, and women know this better than anybody. I always tell the story of how the civil rights leaders were often accused of being tree shakers and not jelly makers. And what is meant by that is that they shake the tree and the apples fall down, and then they go to the next tree and shake that tree and leave those apples on the ground for somebody else to pick up. Women, however, pick them up. We take them to the kitchen. We wash them. We core them. We peel them. We cook them. And men say, oh, well, see, I shook the tree, and that kept you from having to get on a ladder. And so I did the work for you, because women assume you're going to see the work we do. Democrats make that same assumption. That's what Biden did. He assumed the world would see the work he did. And what happened is, if you tell a lie enough, people will believe you. And that's what we have to do. Democrats don't have to lie. We actually have a good story to tell, but we have to tell it and we have to perform. That's why I said performative politics. We now have to tell it from the top of the rooftops, and we have to be in the street showing the contrast between somebody who's trying to tear down the country and tear down the middle class and somebody who's trying to build it up and support the middle class.
You know, in the streets is something that's beginning to happen. I went to a demonstration a couple of weeks back at Indivisible had, and we had someone from Indivisible on the show recently. You know, they send out a email every day about things to do, who to call, where to demonstrate, that kind of thing. In addition to taking it to the streets, are there any other tactics you think we can employ or people of conscience can employ to try to combat the situation we have with the current guy in the White House?
Well, you know, I was just listening to last night at the same time, there was a Reverend Barber did a State of the Union to the Black community, contrasting what Donald Trump and the Republicans are doing. And so I got a chance to listen to that this morning. And, you know, I think everybody needs to listen to it because it's instructive, it's a call to action, and it's very fact-laden and is historical. It puts it all in a historical perspective. And so he's calling for us to take it to the street. I also think that we need to get to very grassroots where Black people and people who care gather. We've got to go to those places. We've got to go to beauty salons. We've got to go to barbershops. We've got to go wherever people gather to tell our story, because that's where we lost people. We lost 6 million people didn't vote. That was the margin by which Biden won. And we know a good many of those people were African Americans who didn't vote. And that's where the Democrats fail, because they constantly believe Black people have nowhere else to go. And one of the things I've said for years is when Black people have nowhere else to go, they don't go anywhere. So they don't leave the house, they don't vote. And so you've got to encourage them and give them a reason to vote.
You know, my kids sometimes say, well, I didn't have to vote this time because some of my kids, not all of them, because it's Illinois. And that's partly that, you know, we have to protect what we have in Illinois, but we also have to kind of reach out to other people. What do you think about, well, I'm going to go to sports next. So I was going to ask, should we go be talking to people about politics outside the Bears games or the White Sox games or the Cubs, or do we go to other states? Any encouragement for how people can take the message to the people?
Yeah, I think you have to, even if it's Illinois and even if it's, you know, I always say we're the only blue state in the sea of red, but that can change. And so you don't want it to change. You don't want to suddenly be purple and then after that be red. So you have to continue to reinforce your values and to make sure that people understand what's at stake. I mean, when you talk about USAID, a lot of people don't understand initially what that means for the farmers in Illinois. One of the things Jesse Jackson said when I was his national traveling press secretary in '88, and I remember him meeting with a group of farmers, and he said to them, you grow corn and the young kids in the projects eat corn flakes. That's how our lives are interconnected. And so we don't look at life like that, but we are interconnected. And so just because something happens in Africa doesn't mean it doesn't affect you here in Illinois. And now the farmers are beginning to see that. And so those are the kinds of connections and connect the dots we've got to make for our people.
That's good. That's really helpful. You had mentioned Reverend Barber. Tell people who he is and where they can find that statement he gave after Trump's talk to the Black community.
Yeah, if you go on YouTube, he was on the Roland Martin show, and he took an hour and talked about all of our values and what's at stake. And as I said, he put it in a historical context from the Supreme Court decision, Dred Scott, all the way to now, Martin Luther King. and what we're facing. The fact that we've been here before as Black people, we've been here before. We had a Supreme Court that was against Black people and ruled against Black people. And so things change, but they don't change because people have good have good hearts. They change because you push them to do the right thing.
I like the idea of keep on pushing, keep on pushing. Last question. This is our sports report. Should the Bears and the White Sox get public subsidies to build new stadiums? Your thoughts?
No. And one of the reasons I say that, I'm a big White Sox fan.
Me too.
I've been going to the games with my baseball was the only sport my dad liked, and so I've been going to the games ever since I was a little girl, and I live only 5 blocks away, so it's in my backyard. But the things that the Reinsdorfs are doing around the United Center is the same things they should be doing around the White Sox Park. And people want to say it's Bridgeport, but it's as much Bridgeport as it is Bronzeville. And the White Sox have a history of the Black community in that it held one of the first games with the Negro League. And so we need to preserve that and keep it here where it is and add to it. In fact, you want more, then add to it. Don't move it to the South Loop. And as far as the Bears, no, one, they shouldn't be on the lakefront in terms of expansion.
Right.
That's my feeling. But certainly we should not be giving public money to subsidize millionaires. I
agree with you. And I'm going to give you 30 seconds for any little last bit of information or encouragement that you would like to share with everybody here on Live from the Heartland.
Well, I'm encouraged in that I always say I'm an optimist. I think that real Democrats are optimistic because we really believe that this country will live up to its fullest potential. It hasn't done it yet, but it has the potential to live up to its fullest potential. And that's what we keep pushing. That's why we're in the Democratic Party. That's why we don't stop. That's why we're activists. It's not cynicism. It's optimism. And so we have to continue to be optimistic, but we have to fight. We cannot be optimistic and sit in our chairs and let other people do it. We have to be on the front lines.
I like optimists fighting for justice and a better world. Delmarie Cobb, thank you so much for coming on Live from the Heartland. You let us know anytime you have something you would like to share, because we always like having you on.
Okay, I appreciate it.